and welcome back to another episode of the Young Dad Podcast. Whether you're outside grilling, mowing the lawn, opening presents, changing dirty diapers, maybe throwing away wrapping paper, who knows? I don't know what time of year it is. But whatever you're doing, wherever you're at, thank you so much for listening and thank you so much for tuning in. I'm your host, Jey, and I have a really inspiring guest whose work is making a significant impact on families and communities. Joining me today is Naomi, a brain injury survivor turned motivational speaker and the founder of TextPledge, a nonprofit organization based in Greater Grand Rapids, Michigan. I'll have to ask her if she's a Michigan State fan or a Michigan fan, Michigan Blue, but we'll see. Naomi's journey is nothing short of remarkable. After surviving a brain injury, she dedicated her life to addressing some of the most pressing social issues affecting modern life, from distracted driving to gun violence. Through TextPledge, Naomi has created 10 pledges that challenge individuals, especially children and teens, to practice compassion, stand up against injustice, and support one another during crisis. Her mission aligns perfectly with the values of parenting and education, and she's here to share her insights on how we can raise resilient, compassionate kids in today's ever-changing world. Because no one likes parents who are raising their kids to be little a-holes, and that's just across the board. Whether it's helping kids develop academic life and emotional skills, navigating the educational landscape, supporting children with learning disabilities, or fostering conversations on race and school integration, Naomi brings a wealth of knowledge and personal experience to the table. So I'm super excited. So I hope you're excited after knowing all that. Grab a seat, join us as we dive deep into these vital topics. So without further ado, let me officially welcome Naomi to the show. Naomi, welcome.
Hey, Jey, thank you. So nice to be here.
Of course. And I'm really excited to talk to you more about TextPledge and, kind of what it's all about. But first, I start everyone off with the same question. Kind of a big question. I don't do no softball questions here, but again, I'm really excited for you to join us. So I start with the big question. I ask all the guests, what's a hill you're willing to die on when it comes to raising compassionate and socially responsible children in today's world?
What's a hill?
Yes, like what's a hill you're willing to die on when it comes to raising compassionate and socially responsible children in today's world?
Wow. I don't know. I just believe in as much as we can do to help our kids become socially and ethically responsible is so important. I mean, it's an everyday discussions with our children need to happen and making the right choices and following the right, guidance, their inner guidance, I guess you could say. So
Yeah,
it's
no,
really
that's so
important.
important. It's super important because a lot of kids, I mean, I have elementary age children and I work with elementary age children for work. I'm a mental health clinician, so I work with a lot of kids, a lot of families. I go to a lot of schools on a regular basis to work with my different clients. And yeah, kids are jerks. Kids are terrible. Not all of them, of course. I'm sure the dad listening to this, and your kids aren't terrible, man. I promise you, but maybe they are, and maybe they are. And it's so important for us to be raising like compassionate children because compassion goes a long way in just day-to-day life. And for our children to have that compassion can really set them up for a lot of success. I feel if our kids are compassionate, it avoids them from getting bullied, or it leads them to just having better friendships, a better social outcome, a better outcome in work, in life, in just everything, with a little bit of compassion, and then just being socially responsible. Break that down with that socially responsible piece of it. With TextPledge, what is that socially responsible, ethically responsible piece that you mentioned?
Yeah. So, when I was forming the organization, I was hit by a distracted driver. I didn't tell my story, but I was really upset at our culture back then. And this was in 2017. And there's a lack of empathy in our society right now, not with everyone, but just some people. And it's so important that we teach our children at the youngest ages to respect everyone around them and show kindness no matter what's going on. And like you said, kids can be jerks, not everyone, but they just don't know. They're learning and growing. And so it's really important that we help form their little minds at the youngest ages. And so when I formed the organization, I really thought about them in the youngest levels, because I thought, if there's anything that we can do to help change our culture, it needs to start with the youngest levels. And I know that a lot of the time they imitate their parents and how their parents are behaving. And that is not okay. And kids are a lot smarter than what we give them credit for. So the social impact, the social change. So we took 10 of our country's biggest dilemmas, from distracted driving, discrimination, acts of violence, bullying and cyberbullying. But yet we show the students how to raise their mental health, how to become a little bit more emotionally intelligent to the world around them and what is happening in society. And so with this approach, we have curriculums from K through college age now. And any mental health worker or teacher or anyone can go to our website and go under teacher resources to view and download our activity books. So, getting back to what you're saying on the social part of it, when I do my presentations and with the students, I help them understand, so if there's something going on with you, or if there's some act of bullying or act of violence, that's a mental health issue, and that needs to be addressed. Okay. So I really help the students understand that it's important to get in touch with your inner self, your inner feelings, and have that positive energy, that attitude to go out and have a great day. Because if you're waking up and you are negative ninny, and you're not going out with a positive attitude, you're not going to be positive around anyone else. And you can, just emanate that negative energy to all the other students. And so I was a kid that grew up with a disability, and I was told from the youngest ages, you're slow. You're not like me. If you don't believe in the things that I like or do, I don't want to be around you. I don't want to hang around you. You're just not like me, and so those things still stuck with me for a long time. And so how we treat others really has a direct response, not on who they're, talking to, but also on them, because we never know what one situation is going to be like. We never know when someone walks out that door, whether that's going to be the last time that we see them. And so how we're respecting and talking to others is so, so important.
I couldn't agree more. And, I live with currently still, of course, but I was really impacted when I was a little kid by a physical disability.
Mhm.
That made me run different, that made me walk different, that made me not be able to walk upstairs, that would cause me to fall just randomly, whatnot. And so, yeah, it was super tough, because it's like I fit in with a lot of kids, like socially, I was fine. But overall, just like physically, it was really hard to find a space to get in, because I was a big kid. I was a husky little lad. And so it was physically, it was hard to get in, because PE teachers and coaches, everyone was like, oh, well, you're a big kid, you should be stronger, you should be faster, you should be all these things. And it's like, okay, well, I'm not. I'm really not. And it was really difficult to try to fit into those molds, to when you fit into those molds physically, and you look like you fit into those molds, but you don't fit into those molds in reality, like in the own individual's perception of reality. And that's really tough. And then I don't want to go off on a soapbox on the whole if you're not with me, you're against me thing, because that's just a crock of BS. Let's have a conversation, and talk to see where we have middle ground and where we have things in common, and let's have an honest conversation, and maybe a little debate, a little spirited debate, which is more than healthy, in my opinion. That if we don't agree, okay, let's agree to disagree, and let's have a conversation. Let's educate each other on our beliefs and our opinions and whatnot to get that. So, but you mentioned that so TextPledge was born out of you surviving a car accident that led to a brain injury, correct? Or a
Yes,
brain injury
yeah.
was the result of that? Okay, go ahead
I
and
think it
share that
was
a little bit.
go ahead.
Well, I was just asking you to go ahead and share that a little bit about how the getting hit by the distracted driver led to, pushing you to form TextPledge.
Yeah. I think it was a little bit of, my background, Jay. And then when I had to, I was hit by a distracted driver. I had no idea what was happening. I just remember looking up at the hospital room ceiling, asking God why he left me here. and I was so frustrated with our world and the way that it has, kind of been for so long. Over the course of the last, 50 years, we have grown so exponentially as a society and culture, with, the advancements in the automobile industry and the advancements in the tech industry and the cell phones. And we haven't had a really good handle on the things that have been created to make sure that there's protocols in place to help protect all of our youth. Now, if you look back, 40 years, we had 45 years or 50 years ago, the seatbelt laws were very minimal, right? And so as we move forward, the seatbelt laws became a lot stricter. As with the cell phone laws, it takes government so long to implement change and make sure laws are passed. And so my frustration was my background of who I was as growing up and dealing with all of these issues. And, I know parents and I have loved ones that have lost their lives to many of these issues that TextPledge stands against. So, I was fortunate to survive. My uncle went out for pizza for his family 1 month later, and he never was allowed to come home because he was struck by a driver. And so the power of our present and the power of our moments matters so, so much. And I'm thankful that I was able to, recalibrate all of my new normals. I had to learn how to talk right, walk right, think right, comprehend right. All of those things are so important. And so we put together, let me just give you a backstory. When it started, it was just a distracted driving program. And I was out and determined to solve this problem. And so I did interviews with judges, EMTs, first responders, and so many others that are on the right there when a accident happens. And so that's how it started out. But over time, it started developing into more. Well, why can't we just incorporate this? Because we're seeing so much of this in society. Why don't we incorporate this? We're seeing so much of this in society. So this is for the United States now. So the United States has all of these 10 issues. And our program was developed so that it was easily duplicatable for any nation in any land. What it is, the 3-tier synergistic approach is, one, we've created a downloadable app where parents can download the TextPledge app. They will have an emergency crisis card right at their fingertips. So that's any single 800 number that a student would need in a crisis situation or an adult. So download the TextPledge app and you'll be able to see that. The crisis card. The pledges don't come in until 5th grade because we see that pledges, we want students to make conscious decisions and know that they're making those decisions right. So we felt over at the 5th grade level, they know what they're doing. They can make these decisions. And so we took the approach was, let's take the country's big dilemmas. Let's show them the statistics. So that synergistic effect is, one, you're going to download the app. You've got all the emergency crisis lines. 2, our website will show you the statistics. So if you want to know the statistics of distracted driving, it's going to show you some statistics pulled from government sites. If you want to know statistics of hate crimes and discrimination, and these are from the United States government sites. So that, in a nutshell, is really, really important. So if a student wants to know more about what are the statistics of our country, they can go and learn those. The third approach is our curriculum and our activity books. So like I said, again, our activity books are free on the website for all ages and on the app. Now, they may not be the latest version because we are constantly updating to make these, we're growing with the times. Let's just say that. If a parent or a student were to want to get a big book, we have our big books. Here's one of our big books right here. These are on Amazon.com. So there's so many resources now that, are available. I thought it was really, really great that now a first or second grader, first or, kindergartner even can know what distracted driving is. They can know, like maybe their parents should put the phone down, or maybe we shouldn't fight in the car, so that, their parents could drive a little bit safer. And also, the acts of violence, it starts out at the youngest ages. We want to help them, kind of change over what's going on, and help them see, like, you know what, you can rise above all these issues. You can, see that, life can be better, so that's kind of our overall goal with TextPledge.
Very cool. Yeah, and while you were, I had it up here for the listeners or the viewers rather, so that they were able to get an idea of the website here. Showed them a little bit about the statistics. I clicked into the distracted driving pledge, and started going through it a little bit for the listener here to look through. So it's a really cool, very engaging website. It's very easy to navigate, but I love these 10 pledges here, and these 10 issues are huge issues, and ones that I feel like a lot of parents struggle with, right? Struggle with having the conversation about these things, because
Yes.
especially, and I'm not gonna put anyone on any certain parent on blast here, because I feel like it's on both sides of the aisle that people struggle with the discrimination one. And the discrimination
Hmm.
one is a two-way street, whether you're a person of color or whether you're not a person of color. So whether you're white or whether you're not. I'm biracial, so I have some room to speak about this here. Being on both sides of the aisle. I've been the majority, I've also been the minority at the same time. And it's a really interesting dynamic world, but there is a lot of discrimination out there. And again, like you mentioned earlier, kids mimic what they're taught. Kids mimic the things that their parents do and say, and the way they look at certain people, the way they act around certain different people. And so if you're white, I'm just going to say it, and you're acting a little weird or hesitant or nervous or, reserved around people of color, your kids are going to pick up on that. And guess what? They're going to go to school and they're going to act the same way around their colored peers when they're children. They're not going to
Absolutely.
understand why. They're not going to understand why. Both children are probably not going to understand what the hell's going on, but the white child going to know, I'm going to feel nervous around you, and then the colored child's going to feel like, why, like, what kind of thing. But then it can be bred on both sides of the aisle. Script can be flipped. A person of color can be like, oh well, you need to act this way around white people, and vice versa. And so it's such a hard topic. Like, a lot of these are really difficult topics for the average parent to talk about. Violence with and without guns and weapons. Very important to understand, like, guns and weapons and things like
Hmm.
that, how dangerous they are, but also how good they are as well. Because without guns, we don't have we don't have a First Amendment. We don't have a constitution, right? And so bullying, cyberbullying, that can be a really hard topic to talk about. Raising mental health awareness, incredibly important for parents, especially dads, to be aware of what that may look like for their children, because it's going to look like very different for us men, because we don't talk about it statistically, right? We don't talk about it. These things aren't known, commonplace. We weren't taught how to talk about it, and so now having to talk about it with our kids can be really difficult. But having a activity book that kind of guides us through the conversation, that's a game changer right there.
Yeah.
Stopping domestic violence and assault. There's 1 in 7 men, at least in the UK, experience DV, and the US numbers are not representative of that. I'm sure they're very similar, but they're just not talked about. So 1 in 4 men who have experienced rape, physical violence, and or stalking by an intimate partner. So there it is right there. So I appreciate that you have that. So the women's statistic, the male statistic, they're only off by a matter of percentage point there, And again, something very important to talk about, especially for your boys, for your sons, to understand what this looks like. That is not okay to be tolerated. Yeah,
Right.
driving under the influence. For that one and distracted driving, how do those differ? Because if you're driving distracted, that's one thing, but isn't that also kind of being under the influence at the same time, in that
Yeah,
sense?
so no. Yeah, no. Distracted driving, there's so many different things that come in with distracted driving. Um, the way that our books were developed, and again, we don't bring in any of the touchy subjects for the youth until about fifth grade. That's when we start introducing some of the topics that, no one likes to talk about. And unfortunately, these are conversations that need to be talked about. We don't want them to happen to anyone, but we want the students to be, protecting themselves just a little bit more than, what we're doing right now. And so that's why it became very, very important to help students understand, okay, this is distracted driving. This is driving under the influence. Yes, of course they can correlate. Yes, they can go together. If someone is driving under the influence, they should not be. But, again, we kind of show in the high school, the fifth and sixth and seventh and eighth, how, distracted driving impairs a driver, how that is so, it's awful, and the statistics are worse. So, we want to make sure that we're just doing our due diligence as far as explaining to the students and the parents, this is what this is, and this is what this is. And so, we had a team of educators that came in and put the curriculum together, and they did a really, really great job. Now, our vision is to make sure that this is available in every single country so that all countries can, kind of have our resources and utilize them. But, we know that the activity books can definitely be utilized all over the world right now. But we would love to see our app in various countries.
No, I think that's a great thing because it's across the world, right? Like all these things don't just happen in the United States; they happen everywhere. And
Everywhere.
it's crazy when the average person doesn't really think about it, but I think about it quite a bit. Like we're kind of all distracted all the time, no matter what we're doing. Like we're all doing things. Like we're having this conversation right now, but I'm also looking at a Google Doc. I was also looking at the website while you were talking and doing multiple things. Like I have combined type ADHD, so I can multitask at a very high level and do those multiple things. A humble brag there. But the average person, they're driving distracted most of the time, I feel. And whether they're looking directly at their phone or not, whether they're flipping through music or checking a text or they're looking at their watch or they're doing something, like the average person is distracted while driving a lot of the time. And I'm honestly really surprised that there's not more accident than there actually is because so many people are distracted or everyone's in a hurry or everyone's just in a rush. And
Yes.
like
It's
it's
very
mind
scary. To be honest with you, it's very scary. Some of the states have initiated the hands-free laws, where you cannot have a device in your hand anymore. But unfortunately, every year lives are lost to, distracted driving. It's just our way of, doing what we can to help out and, help our students understand that this is what's going on. This is how we want to help you move forward in a more positive direction. Yes. And back to what you're saying about being distracted. Yes, of course, we can all be distracted. But when we're driving a 6,000-pound vehicle, we need to take that more seriously. And especially, all of these topics need to be taken really seriously and not taken, at large, that we should not have conversations about these anymore because we can, rise above them if we just help implement the right, procedures and protocols to help our kids move forward.
definitely.
I always share it with students, your mental health is affected in various ways. Okay. So like you said, you have ADHD, I have OCD. And so I want things, a certain way. I love things a certain way, but it's, we just have to really focus in on what is important. Right. And with the discrimination too, it's not just regarding skin color. It's regarding religion, your race, your disability. All of those things play a huge portion of discrimination. And I talk with people with disabilities a lot. And I love, having conversations with organizations that help people with disabilities because, they were kind of pushed along the side for so long as, not being important. And so even just that dynamic needs to change.
No, absolutely. When it comes to the discrimination side of it, I feel like most people think primarily about discrimination being that of race. right? Like discrimination is race and just race, but it goes a lot deeper. It goes to religion. I mean, look at what's happened on like a religious landscape. Politically, different groups of religious individuals are constantly persecuted and sought after and killed, and different groups of people attack different groups and go after them for their religion, things like that. Um, you know, in America, one thing I was listening to recently was, have you ever heard of the ballerina farms lady?
I have not.
So I think it's like ballerina farms. Hold on, I'm gonna ballerina farms or something. Okay, so basically what this is. So this lady, I don't know her name, but basically she's LDS. She has 8 kids, and she started posting content in 2022 on TikTok about being a traditional wife, being super happy, staying at home, raising kids. Her husband's a hog farmer. Like they're just super humble, happy people. Like she's just so happy.
Mm-hmm.
She's happy in her relationship with God. She's happy in her relationship with her kids, her husband. Like she's deeply in love with her husband. She loves her kids. She loves raising her kids. All these things, right? Like traditional lifestyle. She loves it. She posted content about it. She jumped from a couple million followers to 10 million followers, or in the span of a couple years. And so there's this one lady who made it her life mission, who's single, not Christian, not religious, doesn't have kids, anything like that, and basically wrote a book about her called Yesteryear, saying that, going about her life, but then taking it back to the 1810s and then making it this whole like fallacy and everything. And now it's being turned into a movie because because Anne Hathaway is going to be the star because it's feminism, right? And but it goes against modern feminism versus being able to just be okay and support that traditional loving lifestyle of being Christian and being a stay-at-home mom and things like that. And so it's one of those things where it's like traditional lifestyles under attack, traditional Christianity is also under attack in our country as well, to where it's like persecuted. That's discrimination in itself. This what's happened with Ballerina Farms, and between this one woman who wrote a whole book and now weaponizing it into a movie and things like that, is against this one person for their lifestyle, and which reflects tens of millions, obviously 10 million other people. When she just wants to live her life, make sourdough recipe, milk goats, and do that stuff. That's all this one lady wants to do. But of course, people always find something wrong, and will find a reason to discriminate or to hate, when it's like, why can't we just leave good and well enough alone? And I think that's really important for our kids to learn. One thing I teach my kids, my daughters, is that if it doesn't concern you, you don't need to get involved. Kind of thing.
Right.
If it's none of your business,
Absolutely.
it's not your business. Don't stick your nose into situations where you don't got to stick them into. And
Yeah.
but also, if you hear something and it's not right, say something. If you know something's not right, like, don't just be a wandering bystander. Go and say something.
Yes.
If someone's getting bullied and you can see they're clearly getting bullied, then go and intervene, go and say something, or go and get an adult for that other kid, because maybe they're too afraid to. But you're fine. You're just a bystander, but you can still do something. You can still make an impact. And so, but that bullying, I can't tell you how much that bullying impacted my mental health when I was a kid. Like, it was so hard. Like, there was, on top of the discrimination of being, I wouldn't categorize myself as disabled, but I have a disability, right? And so you compound the disability with the bullying. And so when I had like a bad day, when my legs literally wouldn't work, I couldn't get out of bed. But then when I was good enough a couple days later to go back to school, and my legs were so really sore, really heavy, it's like, shit, I'm going to have to play. I'm going to have to try to shoot a basketball. I'm going to have to try to run, and I'm going to be waddling. I'm going to be walking different. Like, all in my head, like, people are going to be asking me questions like, why are you walking like that? Why are you walking funny? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing that? Why are you doing this? Why are you doing this? Like, I don't have an answer. Like, I'm freaking 8. I'm 10 years old. Like, chill out.
Yes.
Kind of thing.
It's none of your business.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, I was the same way. So I had juvenile rheumatoid arthritis when I was diagnosed at 7, but I had it since I was 3. So, I mean, there was times that I would just ask God, like, please take me home. Please. I don't want to live anymore, because of what kids can do to each other. Sometimes they can be the most hurtful. And when your brain is growing, you're the most impressionable. Our neural pathways from 0 to 5 are growing with exponential rate like we've never seen before, and they never will again. And so those first 5 years are the most crucial, but then still being in the classroom with bullies that are not right. I mean, we just got to start hitting that at the head and saying, hey, this is how you need to behave. This is how you need to act in society. And if you are doing something wrong, there's a problem with your mental health, hon, not
Yeah.
anyone else's.
No, I 100% agree with that. And it's so hard for people to admit that they're the problem, that they're the issue, that they have
Yes.
something going on with them. Because a lot of time that bullying is a form of projection, right? Projecting some insecurity from themselves onto someone else. That's what a lot of bullying is,
Yes.
honestly. It's like, well, you're different, so I'm going to call out that different. But, part of me wishes I was different too. Part of me wishes that, I got some of the extra attention and stuff that you're getting. Some of me wishes I got some of that, extra time that you get on your work because I need this extra time too, but I don't get it. But you get it because you're different. And I'm going to make you feel bad for that.
Right.
Additionally, cyberbullying is so high and has led to so many issues. And it took Instagram until 2024 to have teen accounts that are fully filtered and fully locked and fully everything. How did it take Instagram until 2024 until Zuckerberg decided to say, I was involved in this collusion kind of thing over here before they had teen accounts? Like that should be a no-brainer. Like we have to protect our kids. We have to protect our kids from these things.
I think businesses are going to get away with whatever they can get away with because implementing change is always difficult. And I don't think that Zuckerberg wanted anything bad to come out of it, but I'm sure he didn't know how to make that change happen. Now, federal regulators came in, and then that's when he had to come in and go in front of, all of these parents that have lost their students to, bullying and cyberbullying and all of that. And so, sometimes we just have to make the changes happen. And, I hope that with our curriculum and TextPledge, I know we have a long ways to go, but showing the students from the youngest ages, because if we're reminding them every single year, they're going to be like, oh, no, I don't want to get involved with that. Why would I want to do that? That's a negative energy. It's a negative connotation. If we can keep the high energy, the high levels, the high vibrations and the frequencies, we're going to do so much better in life, and that's so important.
Yeah. And again, it's not just on the social media companies to figure out those things and to be proactive there, right? Like there is some responsibility and accountability there. Like it shouldn't take one person, one teenager dying from cyberbullying because they committed suicide because they were cyberbullied on Instagram by 12 of their classmates for, a year and a half. And it got to them and it got to their breaking point of these 12 other kids, saying, kill yourself, kill yourself, kill yourself to do that, right? Like it shouldn't get to that point to where someone dies, right? It should be
never.
There should always be a proactive approach to this. Like tech companies and things moving forward. Like there absolutely needs to be that aspect in mind. So if a child was to use this app, what safeguards are in place? How are we going to ensure that a kid's safe online? How are we going to do that? Then that needs to be like a federal regulation because kids need to be safe online. And part of that is up to the entities at play. Part of that is up to the tech companies. Part of that is up to the social media companies and whatnot. But a lot of it's also up to the parents to make sure that they're regulating that social media and regulating what their kids are and aren't on. And if you're kindergartner, like I have a second grader, my oldest is a second grader, she doesn't have a phone. She's not getting a phone. If she does get a phone, I'm probably going to get her something from like Gab Wireless, which is a really cool company, very good at protecting children, very good at protecting, limited apps, limited storage things. Or I'm going to get her one of those little like Duke watches that can call like 4 people kind of thing. And that's it, because she doesn't need to be on like social media. Like, yes, the watch has like little games and stuff like that's fine. But if you're handing your kindergartner a freaking iPhone 15 or 16 and sending them to school with it, like that's part of the issue is that now they have this access to the internet, to everything that's going to be rather unfiltered. And so let's say a 4th or 5th grader catches on like, oh, this little kindergartner has a phone. 5th graders aren't stupid. 4th graders aren't dumb. they can come and say, hey, let me see that phone. Let me show you some things right now. Let me do this kind of thing because I want to know, but I'm going to use this kid's phone to get what I want kind of thing. And so it's really dangerous to put those devices in your little kids' hands because they don't really understand what they're doing. They just think it's cool to have a phone. They just probably just want to play, Subway Surfers or something, maybe Candy Crush, who knows? But there's so much more to it. And the safeguards aren't always there. Like Apple does have some really good safeguards. I can admit that, but it's not nearly enough. And so as parents, you need to be hyper aware of when you're giving your kids a phone, when you're giving them a device, what apps are going to be on that device, what parental controls you're going to put on that device, what kind of, more or less contract you're going to give them for checking it. Because if you're paying for that phone and you give it to them, it's a loaner, right? And there's a user agreement here to where if my daughter gets a phone, until I'm not paying for it, until she's paying for it herself or she's out from under my roof, it'll probably be out from under my roof, I have full access to that phone at any given time that I want. Not to invade her privacy or anything, but if she's 17 and a half years old and a senior in high school and I'm still paying for that phone, guess what? Give me that phone. Let me check it weekly. Let me check it. Let me see what you're doing. Because it's an ongoing accountability, and that's going to be a thing that I'm not going to start at 17. It's going to start from the age I give her that phone. If I give her that phone at 10 years old, okay, at 10 years old or 12 years old going to middle school, okay, weekly phone check, hand it over. But you got to be smart. You got to be smarter than your kids, right? If you're always going to check it on Sunday, guess what? I can go through and clear things and delete things on Saturday night before Dad checks it on Sunday. Keep your kids on their toes, right? Check it on Monday. Check it on Wednesday. Check it on a Friday night kind of thing. Check it before they go out with their friends or something like that. I don't know. But get creative, right? But be involved in what your kids are doing online. Be involved. And be willing to correct and reprimand. If you see that they're kind of, this conversation is giving me some red flags, I'm seeing some bullying, or you're talking to a stranger on the internet, nope, absolutely not. Delete, block, delete, let's have a conversation. Delete, block, have this conversation. We're not doing this. This is a no. And be willing to reprimand and correct, in the moment. Because if we don't reprimand and correct in the moment, this is where I see a lot of the issue just as a mental health clinician come, is when we let our children kind of just get away with things, right? And if they're bullying, but it's not corrected in the moment, or it's not corrected shortly thereafter, they get away with it, right? And they're like, oh,
Amen.
I got away with that. Nothing happened. I'm going to do it again and again and again and again. And it's going to get more and more intense, and they're going to be doing it more and more. And it's just a cycle. It's a really, really bad cycle.
Yeah, there is a topic that I like to talk about. It's called Curiosity Killed the Cat. Sometimes we can get so curious, and especially the young ones, they can, explore and, oh, I know I'm not supposed to do that, but maybe, and they push their boundaries. Well, sometimes those boundaries, just like a cat getting a little curious, can wind up in a very, very bad situation or even dead. And so that's why it's important that we provide a lot of prevention to these students, more than what has been done now. So that was, our overall goal. That was my overall goal and mission, was to make sure that all students had more prevention at their hands than what was needed, what they currently had.
Yeah, we need more proactive, right? We need more proactive and more preventative measures in place for all 10 of those issues that you mentioned, right? And it starts with education, but it really starts at home. And I think the activity books are probably, for the average parent that's going to listen to this and then go on, TextPledge.us and look up the material. Like, those activity books are really powerful because they're simple, they're fun, and it makes it an easy way to start this conversation. But the conversation starts at home. Yes, your children go to school. Yes, your children are going to go through your presentation once a year. But is that enough for anything? Really? I don't think that's really enough of anything. It's a start.
No.
It starts the conversation, but if that conversation is not continued, I'm a mental health clinician. I see kids once or twice a week, depending on the situation, depending on kind of what we're working on, kind of thing. My program allots for that, but that's 1 or 2 hours a week that we're working with the kids, right? And so after that, there's a lot of hours after that that conversation those children need to be worked on. And so it's always so important for parents to remember, like, hey, yes, I can talk to your kid for an hour. I can teaching some skills an hour, but you have to reinforce these skills. You have to be the one actively working on them at home, implementing them at home, practicing with them at home, and continuing the conversation at home. I'll tell you a couple things we talked about. If I'm going to tell you these couple things we talked about, that is me prompting you as the parent to continue that conversation, because that child told me that they want to talk to you about these things. So if you don't follow up on that, that child's going to feel defeated. That child's going to feel like, oh, well, dad doesn't care about me. Mom doesn't care about me. Whoever doesn't care about me, because they're not having that conversation with me. I told my therapist told them, and then now they're not doing anything with that information, kind of thing. And that's defeating for a child. And that's really bad. So
routine is probably one of the most important things for students too. If there's any way that you can get your student in a routine, and if I've had kids, I've got one who grew up with ADHD, and I think that, and my other daughter had a physical disability. I think that one of the most important things that we can do for our kids is to establish a routine that helps them understand, okay, this is what's going on this time. This is what's going on this time. And, it just helps them, kind of get through their day a little bit easier, not always like, oh, what's next? Or what are we doing now? Or, so there's no anxiety. They know, like, okay, this is time. This is, school time, dinner time, breakfast time to exercise with my friends, or whatever it is, a relaxed time, so that there's not a lot of anxiety. We want to keep them calm and in a good, spot as best as we can.
Yeah, we want to set them up for success, right? If we're constantly changing things,
absolutely,
and, one day, and that changes with the seasons, right? Because depending on the kid may do a spring sport but not do a winter sport. And so winter's really chill, and then all of a sudden it's okay, practice 3 times a week, game on Saturday mornings, game on Sunday mornings. So now you're doing a sport 3, 4, 5 times a week kind of thing. That's a sudden change, right? Like I saw that with my daughter this last year with baseball, where all of a sudden it was a nice, chill, mellow winter. And then all of a sudden now we're going 4 or 5 nights a week between Awana and between baseball and just between life and everything. Like it was a lot of moving around for her. Kind of thing. And it was very overwhelming to her, to the point where she just didn't want to do baseball anymore. And she just didn't want to do it because it was just so much all of a sudden kind of thing. And so we have to set them up for success, especially with those changes and those habits and those routines, because humans, were creatures of habit, right? All of us. You're a creature of habit. I have a routine. Like when I wake up in the morning to record a podcast, I wake up at the same time. My alarm goes off at once. I snooze it. Then I get out of bed. Then I go and brush my teeth. And I put my contacts in. And then I go and make my coffee. And then I'll come and sit down. And then I have a whole ritual and a routine, right? That sets me up for success for when I'm recording, having a conversation. Like I do prep work ahead of time. Like these questions and things like that. Like I prepped ahead of time. I asked you 2 of the 5 questions I had prepared for you. But we went on all the topics at the same time, right? And so it's really cool how that worked out. But if I don't do this part, then this conversation is just us staring at each other through a screen, like, I don't know what to talk about, kind of thing. And it makes it really weird and awkward for both of us. And so I don't want to do that. But our children also need those habits and routines, right? Like they need a consistent wake up. Like I always want to say the next day starts the night before. And so they need a really strong evening, evening routine. And to where they get their things done, they have time to wind down, they go to bed successfully, they have a good, bedtime hygiene routine and all that. So they sleep really good, they wake up, because then their next day starts that night before with that routine. And then because that night before can 100% affect the next morning. If they didn't sleep good, or they had a rough bedtime, maybe they went to bed, a little bit later than normal, but they still have to wake up at the same time. That's going to affect them, throw off their rhythm and things like that. And it's really important for kids that go between households, like my girls do. My girls go between my household and their mother every other week. And so we used to exchange on. There's a point to this, I promise. We used to exchange on. I want to say we used to exchange on like Sundays or something. So we would exchange on a school night, but then we started exchanging on Friday, because it just happened that we needed to do that one week. But it was like, this was so much easier, because now the week's over. We get to ease into the next week a little bit, go through the weekend, things like that. And now we're eased into like routine and whatnot. And it was so much easier versus just like a sudden snap change. And so
that's wonderful.
It has to be predictable for them, because they need predictable their school routine on the board every day is very predictable. You know exactly what's going to happen next, but they thrive on those things, right? They thrive on those
Yes,
habits,
they
those
do.
routines and things like that. So it's important for them to keep something consistent there, just like it's important for us as adults to do the same. So I love that you brought that up.
Yeah.
But all right, do you have any final things that you want to mention about TextPledge or just about you, your story, or anything in particular that we maybe didn't touch on that you want to mention?
No, I just want to encourage all the parents out there to go and explore under the teacher resources. Look at our activity books, use them with your kids, have conversations, and protect them as much as possible.
I love that. I love that. All right, we're gonna have a couple fun questions here, real quick, then, and then we'll jump into the final question here. So, a couple fun questions. Do you have a personal mantra or quote that inspires you every day?
I have a couple. So, one that I love to kind of reflect on is well done, thy good and faithful servant. I'm very spiritual and I put God first always. So, I always start my day with gratitude. And then I always ask, my creator to come in and, speak through me and use me as a vessel and a tool.
I love that. I do the exact same thing, but for the podcast, because that's the only way it can be successful, right? That's why I've been able to do, nearly 200 different interviews at this point and 200 different conversations. It will be 191 by the time this comes out. But
Wow.
yeah,
Congrats.
it's really cool. It's an absolute blessing to be able to see it that way and to be able to do that and be grounded in that faith and that background. If you could, kind of fun question here. If you could collaborate with any influential figure or organization to further the mission of TextPledge, who would it be?
Wow. Okay. So, there's so many greats, but right now, we're seeing so much violence, whether it's cyberbullying or gun violence. So I would want to collaborate with someone higher up into either cyberspace or someone in the industry of the guns to really help, students, understand that these are dangerous things that have to be really addressed. So.
Absolutely. No, I think that's great. And then the very last question here, Naomi, what advice would you offer to young dads or parents in general who want to raise compassionate, socially conscious children, but may feel overwhelmed by the challenges of today's world? So just one or two pieces of advice for the young parents out there. I became a dad when I was 22 years old, barely. And so what advice would you offer to the very young parents out there?
Every day is a journey. Some days are going to be great. Other days are not going to be so great. And, the best thing that you can do is just take in some deep breaths when you're not having the greatest day with your little one. Take in some deep breaths and realize, okay, I'm the adult in this situation. I'm going to get through this and I'm going to rationally have this, talk with them and why things have to be a certain way. So, my advice to dads is just be patient, but implement, some, protocols for if this happens, this is the reaction. If this happens, this is what's going to happen, so that they always know that if this limit is pushed or if they've done something wrong that, they shouldn't have done, this is the response that's going to happen. And that's how it should be in society, that students always know that whenever something happens, there's going to be a reaction. So that's my advice to them.
I love that. It really falls in line with the prepare and prevent rather than react and repair kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I
Yep.
love that. Well, Naomi, this has been such a fun conversation. Thank you so much for sharing parts of your really inspiring journey. I know we didn't get too deep into it, but I think the listeners got a pretty good sense of a little bit of your story there. And then also sharing with
Yeah.
us your invaluable insights with us today. Your dedication to creating a kinder, more compassionate world is truly commendable. And I'm sure our listeners have gained a lot from this conversation. For those interested in learning more about
Thank you.
TextPledge, one of the pledges, I'll include the links in the show notes. But if you were also watching earlier in the podcast, that's textpledge.us, super easy, textpledg.us. So very easy to find that, but I'll also link it in today's show notes. So let's all consider how we can contribute to making our community safer and more compassionate, one pledge at a time. So thank you all for tuning into the Young Dad Podcast. Until next time, let's continue to strive for a better world for our children and for ourselves. Take care.
Thank you so much.